Arthur stood before his glowing monitors, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Every cent he had earned over a decade of grueling labor was now sitting in position. It was a volatile position, a desperate bet against the corrupt giants of Wall Street today. He had spent months analyzing the subtle, algorithmic footprints of deep and systemic market manipulation. He was convinced that the entire financial system was rigged against the common, honest investor. As the opening bell rang, the ticker symbols began their frantic, dizzying dance across screens. Arthur felt the crushing weight of his entire future resting on a sharp digital precipice. He was not just trading for profit anymore, but seeking a different kind of outcome. He was an investigator armed with a brokerage account, seeking to trigger a catastrophic glitch. This glitch would force the regulators to finally acknowledge the hidden rot within the system. The screen flickered violently, and the numbers turned a deep warning shade of blood red. Arthur braced himself for the inevitable fallout of his reckless, singular defiance against the establishment. The air in the room grew heavy as the market began its wild, unpredictable descent. He watched the lines chart his ruin while simultaneously exposing the greed of the giants. Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer blow against his fragile, desperate plan. He gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white under the harsh light. The monitors hummed with the sound of millions of dollars vanishing into the digital void. He knew there was no turning back once the sequence had been fully set loose. The algorithms he had studied for months were now reacting to his specific, calculated move. It was a dance of chaos, a symphony of numbers designed to break the corrupt. Arthur watched the data streams, waiting for the exact moment the system would finally fracture. His eyes burned from the glare, but he refused to blink or look away now. The red numbers cascaded down the screen, signaling the start of the long-awaited financial collapse. He felt a strange, cold calm settle over him as his savings began to evaporate. This was the price of truth, a sacrifice he had been willing to make entirely. The market was screaming, a digital panic that echoed through the halls of high finance. He saw the cracks forming in the foundation of the giants he sought to topple. The screen displayed the volatility he had predicted, a confirmation of his long, lonely research. He was a ghost in the machine, a small spark igniting a massive, systemic fire. Arthur breathed deeply, watching the chaos unfold with the intensity of a man possessed today. The cursor blinked rhythmically, a metronome counting down the seconds until the final market crash. He adjusted his headset, listening to the frantic chatter of traders across the global network. Their voices were panicked, unaware that a single retail account was dismantling their carefully constructed facade. He watched the order book overflow with sell requests, creating a bottleneck of unprecedented proportions. The sheer scale of the movement was breathtaking, a testament to his months of preparation. He felt the room temperature rise as the processors worked to handle the massive data influx. Sweat beaded on his forehead, yet his fingers remained steady upon the mechanical keyboard keys. Every keystroke was a deliberate strike against the dark architecture of the modern banking world. He watched the price of the target stock plummet, dragging the entire sector down with it. The cascading effect he had modeled in his simulations was finally manifesting in real time. He saw the institutional algorithms attempting to stabilize the drop with massive automated buy orders. They were fighting a losing battle against the momentum he had single-handedly initiated today. Arthur leaned forward, his reflection ghosting over the rapidly changing charts on the glass display. He felt like a surgeon performing a delicate procedure on a patient that was dying. The patient was the market, and the disease was the unchecked greed of the elite. He watched the volatility index spike, a clear indicator that the panic was becoming contagious. Other traders were beginning to notice the anomaly, their own algorithms reacting to the shift. The digital landscape was shifting, turning from a controlled environment into a wild, unpredictable storm. He knew that once the regulators caught wind of this, his account would be frozen. But by then, the damage would be done, and the truth would be impossible to hide. The screen flashed a warning message, but he simply dismissed it with a single click. He was committed to the end, regardless of the personal cost to his own future. The silence in his apartment was absolute, contrasting sharply with the digital noise on screen. He felt a profound sense of clarity, realizing that his life was finally serving purpose. The numbers continued their descent, a waterfall of red ink flowing across the dark monitor. He watched the final barrier break, the last line of defense for the corrupt giants. The system was finally exposed, its inner workings laid bare for the entire world to see. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, savoring the weight of his singular, defiant action. When he opened them again, the market had entered a state of total, irreversible collapse. Arthur sat back, watching the world of finance burn, finally at peace with his decision. As the screen flickered red, the market surged with an unnatural volatility that confirmed Arthur's darkest suspicions. His trade acted like a heavy stone thrown directly into the center of a fragile glass house. The digital landscape fractured instantly as his savings began to evaporate in real time before his eyes. Yet, amidst the financial carnage, the data he had been tracking began to leak into public forums. The hidden code started spilling out, exposing the predatory algorithms that had siphoned wealth for years. Unsuspecting retail traders watched in shock as the truth behind their losses finally surfaced online for all. The chaos Arthur unleashed forced an immediate emergency halt to all trading on the major exchange floor. Sirens of digital alarm blared across the network, drawing the eyes of federal investigators to the patterns. These were the very patterns he had meticulously documented over months of lonely, obsessive, and grueling research. Though Arthur watched his bank account balance hit zero, he felt a strange, cold sense of relief. He had lost every single penny he had saved, but the resulting scandal was already gaining momentum. The massive public outcry dismantled the corrupt trading desk he had targeted with such singular, reckless defiance. Regulators were forced to intervene, leading to unprecedented transparency reforms that would change the industry forevermore. Arthur sat back in his chair, feeling the heavy, quiet aftermath of his empty bank account balance. The room was silent now, save for the soft, rhythmic hum of his cooling computer tower fans. He watched the news reports of his victory unfold on the screen with a weary, hollow smile. Reporters spoke of a massive systemic collapse that had finally brought the hidden rot into the light. He was penniless and utterly exhausted, his body trembling from the adrenaline of the long, brutal fight. Yet, he felt a profound sense of peace settling deep within his tired, aching, and weary bones. He knew that the truth had finally been bought at the ultimate price of his own security. The monitors displayed a world that was now slightly more honest because of his singular, desperate gamble. He closed his eyes, listening to the distant city sounds, knowing he had changed the game forever. The screens continued to scroll through the aftermath, documenting the fall of the giants he once feared. Arthur took a deep breath, letting the weight of his former life slip away into the past. He was no longer a traitor, but a man who had successfully stood against the entire machine. The flickering light of the monitors cast long, dancing shadows across the walls of his small apartment. He stood up slowly, his legs feeling heavy, and walked toward the window to see the dawn. The morning sun began to crest over the skyline, illuminating the city that he had just shaken. He felt no regret for the money, only a quiet satisfaction for the justice he had forced. The market would open again tomorrow, but it would never be the same rigged game as before. Arthur turned away from the window, leaving the glowing screens behind in the dim, fading morning light. He had achieved the impossible, sacrificing everything to ensure that the truth would finally be heard today. The silence of the room was a testament to the battle he had fought and eventually won. He walked to the kitchen to pour a glass of water, his hands finally steady and calm. The world outside continued its frantic pace, unaware of the man who had pulled the lever down. He sat at his small table, watching the first light of day touch the surface of water. Every sacrifice he made had led to this moment of absolute, crystalline clarity and profound, quiet peace. The corruption was exposed, the desk was gone, and the regulators were finally doing their actual jobs. He thought about the retail traders who would now have a fighting chance in the coming years. That thought alone was worth more than any amount of money he could have ever hoped for. He leaned back, closing his eyes, and let the exhaustion wash over him like a warm tide. The battle was over, the dust was settling, and he was finally free from the digital chains. He had gambled his future to buy a future for others, and he had truly, finally succeeded. The news anchor on the television continued to discuss the historic reforms triggered by the market glitch. Arthur didn't need to listen anymore. He knew the story by heart, for he had written it. He took a slow sip of water, feeling the cool liquid soothe his dry, parched, tired throat. The apartment felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the burden of the secret had been lifted. He looked at his hands, calloused from years of hard work, and felt a sense of pride. He had used those hands to build a life, and then to tear down a corrupt system. The morning air was crisp and clean, signaling the start of a new, different kind of day. Arthur stood up again, feeling the strength returning to his limbs after the long, grueling night shift. He walked back to the monitors, turning them off one by one until the room went dark. The darkness was comforting, a soft blanket covering the remnants of his old, desperate, gambling life. He was ready to face whatever came next, knowing he had done the right thing for everyone. The city lights below began to fade as the sun rose higher in the clear morning sky. He felt a strange, quiet joy in the simplicity of his new, penniless, and liberated existence today. There was nothing left to lose, and therefore, he had everything in the world to gain now. He walked to the door, ready to step out into a world that was finally becoming better. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the empty apartment to the silence of the morning sun. Arthur stepped out into the street, a free man in a world he had helped to change.